So welcome to the UpLevel Podcast, dear Moira.
Thanks, Christie. So glad to be here.
And I just said it, today is the day of the eclipse. Obviously, folks will hear this later on, but I said, of course, I'm speaking to Moira Klein-Swormink on the day of the eclipse because you, my friend, are a fucking firecracker. like there's never been one. And, just for some context for our peeps that are listening, you and I go way back now to 2000, I think. That's when we found each other at Cassette Communications, an advertising agency in Toronto, Ontario.
I know. That feels like an eternity ago.
Doesn't it?
We were just kids, Christie. We were just kids making it in the world, trying to make a name for ourselves, figure out who we are in the big city.
In the big city, fresh out of school. And we were working on the McDonald's account. We were like account coordinators or account managers. And oh my goodness, Moira, so many good stories from that time.
So many. And just, I think about what it was like to meet someone like you at that stage, right? And we both just had tons of energy, tons of enthusiasm for the future and for what was possible. It was so special to find someone who, ran at the same pace and whose heart beat a little bit faster than most and who just really felt that joy and love for all things. It was pretty cool.
Pretty cool time. And here we are 24 years later, if you can believe it, because I still think like we're 27.
Yeah.
But it's 24 years later, and you are the principal Canada branch development for folks have already heard this in your bio, but for Edward Jones. And you, over the past 8 years, have been really bringing in coaching practices and principles into the organization. And this is why I wanted you to come and talk about the ROI of coaching in the workplace, because you have been in the trenches, my friend.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. I was hired to Edward Jones to launch an internal coaching program for our financial advisors at the time. So in the Canada office, we kind of started it in the US office. And really, it was kind of coaching was emerging, I guess, on the scene at that time, right? So there weren't a lot of people who understood what coaching was, but heard about the benefits. Obviously, we knew about benefits in coaching and sports and everything. And there was talk of people like Steve Jobs having a coach. So you knew there was something good about it. But yeah, it was at a time when we had to define and help people understand, why it was important. So it was a really neat opportunity and was something that obviously I firmly believed in and have had experience with, starting with you back in the day.
Well, let's go back to how coaching found you, to that story. How did it find you?
Yeah. So, coaching found me, Christie, when you called and said, "Hey, can I coach you practice? I'm learning to become a coach. And, can I just, test a few things with you and, kind of get my feet wet and figure out how it goes?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'm game for anything. I feel like I can learn and be present for you." And, so I remember the first few times, what was interesting is it felt to me like, self-exploration, but through someone else. And I loved that. I remember being a 19-year-old, and that was in the days of like Dr. Phil emerging and like Loretta LaRoche and all those like kind of self-help books. I'm thinking about the chicken soup and all of those, right? And so there was starting to be this awareness that we could tap into that was maybe different than what I had been accustomed to, but always knew was something that I felt and understood on some kind of subconscious level. And so working with you kind of brought that more conscious approach to it, understanding that we could both be, as the saying goes, on the balcony and in the dance, right? We could be living our lives, but also observing what's happening and learning from that and, and being intentional throughout all that, and then understanding how we're showing up in the world. And so I think my early experiences with you helped me to see that there was that dichotomy and that there was a ton of power in that dichotomy. So I think I got hooked pretty darn quickly through our conversations.
Well, yay to that. And I'll take that credit.
You'll take that credit? Yeah.
Look at you now. Look at you now.
I mean, I will give you full credit, Christie, for teaching me what authenticity really meant. Because I think, I spent so much of my life, curating myself for all of those around me that I didn't realize I'd even done it. And I vividly remember in one of these calls, where we got to the point where it was like, you can take the mask off, right? And I was like, what mask? You know? And, to me, that's what coaching really is, right? It's when someone really sees you and sees what you're capable of and what's possible for you and helps you to see what that mask is or whatever the barrier is that might be getting in the way of the true expression of who you are. Coaching has that power. And I certainly experienced that in our early conversations. So I couldn't help but want to pass that along to other people too.
Yeah. And so during like that time frame, I think you were at the Bank of Montreal and you were in a quite a role, high visible role,
Yeah.
lots of responsibility, and you were still quite new to your career. Is that accurate? Do I have the time frame accurate?
I was 23 years old.
23 years old, and you were chief of staff? What was
that was 28. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so that was, I'm getting the timeline. So 23, I remember I was a bank manager, and that's when I think you were first getting started in your business, and we got the bank account set up and things. Had a few conversations that way. And then, I was chief of staff, like in a chief of staff type role with the CEO of Bank of Montreal at the time. 28 years old, learning how to brief a CEO, how to, write speeches and all those things. But I was in leadership at 23, a branch manager, responsible for other people's lives, careers, development, all those things. Right. And, as a firstborn type A, took that very seriously. Devoured all the books, really, spent a lot of time trying to understand what leadership was. Of course, what you learn as you get, deeper and deeper into leadership is that it's actually not about you. It's about the other people. But in order to access that, to be able to be fully there for other people, you have to have solved yourself a little bit too, right?
So I'm having shivers everywhere, and I think we know this about each other, but folks who are listening may not. So it was very similar path our careers took. So I too landed in a leadership role, and I say this all the time. I don't think I had any business being in that role. I was so green, even just to my career, and that's how I too found coaching, because what I was doing is I had been great in the individual contributor role, which is true for so many people who get promoted. And I had all these templates and all these ways to do it. I'd say, just fill out the template and you'll be successful like me,
Exactly.
And I wasn't. The team revolted. They did not like me, and I was not getting the business results I had been hired to get. And when you talk about this piece of taking off the mask, I think for me, this is what coaching did so beautifully as well. So in the coactive model, we call this like negative internal dialogue the saboteur. And we can have multiple saboteurs. Yay, being human.
I have a very advanced repertoire, an entire probably cheering squad of a saboteur.
Totally. They're all ready to rock.
Yeah.
One of mine really prominently, and tell me if this resonates with you, she's called Miss Perfect Pants.
Oh, no, I've never been a perfectionist ever.
Never, ever, right? And, I tell the story of folks when I first identified that voice, yes, it's a part of me, but it's something that I can pull out and harness and not have it run the show. Right. And you use the word authenticity. I can tap more into who I truly am as a human, as a leader. And when I started to really play with that is when my leadership grew. My team started to respond to me differently. Then it became more about helping them tap into their authentic way of doing things. And then the business results came. What's your experience in working? What do you call that part of yourself? Because I know you've been hardwired for perfection.
Oh, yes. Well, so it's funny because you used the term back in the day, head trash. And so saboteur is the technical term, but we used head trash. And I use that a lot. And anyone who has worked with me and that I've led will know head trash well. For me, Little Miss Perfect kind of works a lot. I would, the names, one big saboteur who I often have to deal with is really the person who never thinks I'm good enough. Right. So, for me, it's like, it's like, doesn't measure up. And that's just what that's how I've internalized it. I didn't really maybe give her a fancy name, but it was the doesn't measure up. And, it's so funny because I actually, in thinking about how that serves me, that really helped, right? So it's not all bad. And kind of you said that too. Like I was able to separate Miss Perfect and then use her wisely, but then not have her run the show. And it's the same idea. It's like, I know that drives me, right? That doesn't measure up, actually helps me to see what more is possible and stretches me. At its worst, that doesn't measure up, literally holds me hostage, and I cannot be the person I am meant to be. And throughout my career, I've had a number of just sage coaches, and what can get frustrating sometimes is you realize you're dealing with that same thing over and
Over and
right?
over again.
Like,
Doesn't
this is
matter.
your life's work.
It is your life's work. Just
Yeah.
because you got that awareness, you maybe identified it. Guess what?
Yeah,
Gonna keep coming back.
that still shows up. And so, that's been really helpful to just also accept that it's there, because then the skills you learn, you practice them more, and you become more fluent at it. And it's less of, you become less of a caged bird, and you're able to spread your wings much more readily, right? It's like, oh, I have the keys now every time.
Yes.
So I can get out and get free and be the best version of me. But also back to the leadership piece, Christy, it's every time I'm at my best, I'm able to bring out the best in others. Anytime I'm in my own way, I can't do that for other people. And I'm a leader. It's my responsibility to help people see what's possible for them and develop into that. And, that's where coaching really helps, because you can self-coach, right? After you build up these skills and tools, and then you can apply them with others. And so when you're involved in something with such exponential impact, and that's what coaching is, right? So you coach me once, I don't forget those skills and never use them again. You coach me, I learn them, I use them with how many other people have I led over my career? Lots and lots and lots. So everyone gets better when you adopt this approach, and that's the power. And I just find that electrifying to consider. And back to your point as well, it's, when you get the people right and you clear the, you kind of create and develop the people for the path that lies before them, support them to be the best version of themselves. That's when you get the results, because that's when their brains are firing. That's when their true passion is just coming alive. That's when they give you the discretionary effort that's required to actually transform an organization at any given time. And we know that's just a requirement these days for business.
It is. I want to talk more about like what you've witnessed over the past 4 years, because wowsy. But before we go there, in your role as bringing in these types of competencies and skills, and in traditionally financial institutions or industry would be considered more like traditional. I know from what I've learned from you and other friends is that Edward Jones is quite progressive. But what have you done to enroll internal stakeholders when you share the potential impact or impact of coaching, and they think it sounds, out there or not measurable, or it's not a necessary component? Instead, they want maybe training on like how to use, certain technology. How do you enroll people internally?
That's a great question. I mean, actions always speak louder than words, Christy. And so I'm big on demonstrating the impact. And so, we had this awesome gift that the company decided, yes, we're going to move forward with this. So then it's okay. Let's track this. Let's meet with people. Let's apply this coaching model. And yes, let's see where they were before and where they are after. Let's get that qualitative feedback on what they're experiencing, what their level of engagement is with the firm, those types of things. And, I feel super blessed to be at an organization that puts so much on really our competencies and our behaviors, how we do the things we do. And over the years that I've been here, the firm as a whole has evolved to adopt leadership principles and behaviors that are supportive of activating each individual for what they bring to the table. And so being able to show that through the coaching process, that, Christie's a financial advisor in Canada and Moira is a financial advisor in the US, we may have different clients and we may do different things. Coaching gives us the ability to allow them to find their best way for their clients, for themselves, and then ultimately for the firm and communities. And that's what we're here for, that broader mission. So I feel, one of the big hangups can tend to be that coaching is sort of one way. And the reality is, even as coaches and proponents of coaching, we have to be flexible too. Companies need coaching in different constructs at different times. So it may not be that you're going to have a direct one-to-one coaching model for, here in and out. Rather, you're going to apply coaching principles in different ways. So I think right now about the work we're doing with clients. So financial planning is central to life planning. You cannot, like health, wealth, all of that they're all connected. In order for us to help our clients achieve their wildest dreams and to manage the fears that come around with life and events and just whatever goes on, we need to know the client deeply. And to know the client deeply, coaching principles are front and center, right? I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to park my agenda as an advisor, the one that says, I have to know everything and tell you what to do. And this is this. Actually, no, this is my opportunity to say, oh, Christie, why is that important to you? What about traveling the world next year matters so much? Oh, it's that you've had this wild and crazy dream, or, oh, you want it as a time to connect with your partner more deeply, or whatever it is. Well, that changes how we look at it. That changes the emotional relationship we have to it and how we might structure the solution. And so when our advisors are equipped with these coaching type skills, for instance, they're able to go deeper with clients. So I look at it as coaching doesn't necessarily have to follow and fit in this one box or this one perception that we have with coaching. It's how does your company utilize those coaching principles in the best possible way to achieve the desired outcomes for your mission, for your clients, for your associates.
I love that. There's some Moira Klein-Swormink wisdom drop right there. Yeah, but it's really true because I think internal advocates like you, that's what you just said is really important for them to hear, because we could get caught up in it has to look a certain way, like we're going to train all our people managers and coaching skills, or we're going to have a cadre of internal coaches. But what you're saying is, let's get really specific on how we use the skills in different contexts, in different roles, because these are ultimately, we say this all the time through UpLevel, they're relationship skills.
Yes.
They're about having more conscious, impactful, effective, collaborative, trustworthy relationships.
Yeah.
So, but I still want to hear, like, when you've had to do internal sales.
Yeah.
Like, give us some.
I think we're even doing it now, right? So I would say when we think about what our branch teams need right now, it's different than it was. So do we keep our coaching team intact? How do we justify coaching in the firm? And I think there's a lot of tension in terms of, to your point, like we've got resources in different ways. Like maybe we need to take more of a consultation approach right now as opposed to coaching. And so the biggest thing, Christie, is always to be, again, use your coaching skills and be open to what the perspective is. So I'm always asking questions and seeking to understand what's the motivation underneath it. If it is that we need to cut costs, okay, what are the costs you're trying to cut? And then what's the risk? Like, what's the opportunity cost of shutting something like this down that we do see provides ROI to the bottom line, for instance, right? And so you can talk dollars and cents. If you have the right, diagnostic data and tools and stuff, that's one thing you could do. Another thing is, as you start to understand, okay, so if it's not money, then what is it? Well, we just think it's not working the way it intended. Okay, well, what's the intention, like the intended outcome you want? And how do we define that? And maybe that's just about reimagining or kind of re-understanding, like between the two people, right? It's like, okay, maybe we're just not speaking the same language. Maybe we just aren't oriented around the same type of outcome. So it really comes down to, can you listen and truly understand their perspective, and then have an open conversation about what's on at stake and what's on the table, and then of course make the decision in terms of what the path forward might be.
That's super helpful. What would you say has been one or two of the most impactful coaching skills or concepts inside your organization that you've ensured the teams have learned and deployed?
Oh, how do you choose just two? I
I
mean,
know.
honestly, Christy, I think the first one is giving people permission to move into the emotion that's there.
Oh,
I think
say
we're
more.
afraid of that. So, for instance, I took over a team and, they tell you about all the people on the team, right? So, well, this person can tend to get emotional in meetings, like be really like in one-on-ones, can feel upset. And my first instinct is, well, what's behind that? Like, nobody comes to work to cry every day. So, what's behind that? Whereas other people just like try to forget about it, brush it,
Yeah.
or don't want it, right? Resist it. And so, you know, I feel like creating space for there to be emotion
Mm.
and for us to talk about it openly and try to understand it, not solve it. That's not our business. Um, I think in professional settings, that's important. And I think that it opens up a more real, authentic dialogue. It opens up understanding and empathy, and it creates space for us to move forward more effectively, supporting the whole person. Because as you know, we are whole people. We don't just come to work and like, chunk off that other aspect. Um, and when people have permission to be their whole selves, that's a truly safe environment where then they can be their absolute best. So I think moving toward the emotion is instead of away from it is one. The second one I would say is listening. And Christy, I love to talk. I know, and that
Me
maybe this
too,
is my life's
sister.
work too. The
Me
listening
too.
piece. um but I continue to hone that skill. And I think like the more we can encourage other people to really pause and listen, like, what did they really say? And I don't, that we always talk about with CTI, of course, it's the contextual listening, right? It's what's not being said. What's that energy you feel or don't feel? Um, that's critically important. And especially through COVID, I found, you had to tune in a different way. And I mean, on a Zoom screen with like 48 little blocks, I made it my business to like notice a twitch if I had to, and to call things out and give people the opportunity to have a voice, to put a name to that, eye roll or whatever we caught them in.
Yeah.
And it was okay. It was like there was no judgment. So it's, can you truly listen even when you're the one speaking, and especially frankly when you're the one speaking? Are you listening for that impact? Are you watching for what and listening for what's not being said? So yeah, those two have been instrumental, and I certainly encourage all leaders and associates to think about that, right? And then the classic, of course, it's, can you try honestly to see things from the other person's perspective? Like really
Perspective.
honestly.
Yeah.
Perspective is, and it's hard, especially for someone like me who's pretty much always right.
Of course. Me too.
um, can I, and I do it as a discipline. Like, I'm going to this meeting. This is what I think. What might two other people in the room think based on their experience, based on their, their role in the firm? And I'm usually genuinely surprised. And often I change my mind, which is, a really important skill in itself.
Well, the skill of perspective and of course listening, it helps us be more flexible and agile as leaders. And we both know, and everyone listening, that what's occurred over the past 4 years is requesting all of us to be more agile and flexible. And folks leading other humans, no longer is there that luxury of you've got your work self and you've got your home self. Even if folks are back in person in the office, there has been a request, I think, to all of us to be more sensitive. So I loved the third skill you brought in, which is moving towards the emotion versus away from it, creating permission for it. And so organizations really need to make the investment in their people managers to have those skills, to have more capacity to hold the space, to read the space, to listen into the space, to put themselves in other people's shoes, to not to have an awareness of their own relationship with their emotions, so that if maybe they don't have a positive relationship with their emotions, they can do some work around that so that then they can be with other people in their emotions. And I love what you're saying. It's not about figuring out where the emotion's coming from. It's not about analyzing. It is about witnessing another human in a moment where they're having an emotion. It could also be an emotion that we deem as positive. In my world, all emotions are equal, but I know very much in the world, we're still working on that. But like, we want to be able to hold space for joy.
Yep.
No, your
Absolutely.
team member, they got that promotion or they hit the targets. They had a brilliant presentation. Can we not step over that? Can we amplify that and listen deeply and encourage the joy? What will that do to the bottom line? How does that bring, the ROI back into the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, that's such an important call. We just had our colleague engagement survey or experience survey results. And one of the things that came out was just that need for recognition. And it is true. And I mean, I'm guilty as everyone else, as anyone, I should say, of just being like, yeah, I did that. Okay, what's next? And to your question, the benefit of acknowledging success is that you raise the frequency with which we all operate, right? Like now we're like, okay, I've got this energy. I've got this wind at my back. I've got momentum that I can build on and grow from. And I think it goes without saying that when you provide positive feedback, positive reinforcement, and you call out specifically the value someone's bringing to your day, to your meeting, to your project, whatever it is, you're going to see them want to give more. And the more we can do that, the better. And that's not to say don't give feedback. Constructive feedback. In fact, we know that that's critical for anyone's personal growth journey. It's how you do it and in what context. And I think coaching has been really good for that as well. Because when you're giving feedback, it is essential to recognize that there's a whole human is going to have a lot of emotion around whatever it is you're going to provide. So taking time to think about that and to construct your feedback in a fair, specific, positive way in the sense that, I thought it was something Adam Grant said recently. It was like, I'm going to give you this because I believe that you're capable. Like I hold you as so capable that that's why I'm going to tell you what I'm about to tell you. And that's really it. Right. And when we give feedback from that place, like real constructive feedback, there's just so much power to be had and also just personal growth for both the giver and the receiver, right? Because you're paying attention. When you can be that specific, you're really paying attention. And, when we care, like paying attention is a demonstration of just how much we care, which is extremely important for all of our success.
And I think that's another outcome of developing people and coaching skills is you grow people's capacity.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right. And so it's like if we all have these screens on every day, we're tracking, our results, our timelines, our KPIs, we're tracking our team members, our managers, we're tracking our home life and our relationships there, our own health. Like there's so many screens. And if anything, the past 4 years has asked us to access more screens, to grow our capacity to hold more, observe more. And then, like, I love where you're pointing us. It's like, then do you have the courage to have the conversation? And that takes capacity. It takes grit. So when you look, like if you reflect back over the past 4 years and actually, I want to ask you more because you've been in the workplace for 24 years. I know. I said it, but we're still 27 forever. Forever. So how have you seen coaching shift in the workplace over the past 2 decades?
I honestly, some days I feel like it's night and day. Like I remember, and still some days can default in that space where it's like the boss said, and so I do. And in honesty, like I didn't have a problem with that. Like you told me, I understood our relationship and I'm going. And now it's totally different. Now,
It is.
I think about how I went through so much of my earlier career believing that I had to be the smartest person in the room. I had to be the person with all the answers. I had to keep working to get smarter and learning and constantly. And gosh, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And now the skills I have actually enable me to bring together the smartest people on all of these topics and to ask really powerful questions that help us move work forward, that help us identify risks, that help us identify, potential barriers, that help us consider multiple perspectives so that in the end we can make the best possible decision, to move forward. And watching that happen now versus the way things used to be done, like just what it unlocks in terms of possibilities is just it fires me right up. Like I love nothing more than to sit around a table with people way more intelligent than I am and to just have that conversation and watch it fly and then be able to say, okay, so here's what I've heard. Are we on track? And now can we assess it and keep going? And, when you have the coaching capability, you know how to separate yourself from the outcome, right? So with coaching, as you know, it's up to you. Like, so when you would coach me, Christie, you weren't like, oh, I really want Moira to be this way. Because none of that. It was Moira is going to get where Moira is going to go. I'm just going to explore with her. I'm going to give her I'm going to hold space for her to explore and become, right? And it's the same. It's like, I'm going to hold space for this idea to become something. I have no idea where it's going to land necessarily, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that skill is increasingly important because information comes from everywhere now, right? Like
Yes.
It's not from the C-suite boardroom. It can come from anywhere. And having those skills creates the space for just for really optimizing that.
Yeah. So I mean, you've really seen this transformation, and to the point too where you then 8 years ago took on a role where it's your responsibility to bring the practice of coaching into an organization. Mm-hmm. What had you choose to pivot the content of your day to day? Is that a fair way to describe what you did at that point?
Maybe not entirely. So I guess I'll break it into two parts. So on one hand, through my own coaching journey, through my own leadership journey, I recognized that the coaching skills were actually what we needed for the future of, leadership in companies and wherever, just period. And so I kept nurturing that and role modeled it. Like that was the biggest thing I could do there was just how can I role model that this is the way to lead going forward? Yeah. And that wasn't always easy, right? I remember a couple of leaders sort of, being like, well, you're managing up. I'm not sure why you're doing that. And so, there was discomfort with it at first, but I think there's persisting and really demonstrating what that looks like and then, naturally getting results is helpful. The other piece was, so coaching itself in the firm. So we decided, okay, we want to equip financial advisors to find ways to kind of leapfrog their success, right? Yeah. And we all know that as human beings, we get in our way. And sometimes having that coach, just like on the, sports field or wherever, helps us unlock whatever that might be. And so we created processes that enabled advisors to opt in because, as you know, you can't be forced to be coached. It has to be a willing thing. Yeah. So we hired a team of coaches and nurtured their skills and capabilities, and then we're able to deliver those to those who opted into the process. And again, yes, we measured how many people we put through the program. We measured what their results were before and then what their results were after. We played with how long the duration of the program should be. We played with, what we provide in the context of we're in a firm and we have best practices and things like that. Like, where's the line between pushing our agenda versus really wholly allowing you to find your way? So we had to, play with all of that through the process. I think the biggest learning, there's so much benefit to this way of doing things that integrating it fully across the board has more power than just having one department deliver coaching. And that's not to say that coaching in that context doesn't matter. It's just that we knew these skills had more legs than just that. So, and I think the firm realized that as a whole in North America, and we had great leaders, way before me, and in other departments who saw that too, and really began to enable that culture throughout.
Is there a metric that you could speak to that you saw increase due to the financial advisors receiving the coaching?
You talked about capacity. So we saw capacity increases because people start to recognize what their patterns are. And so when you can start to reshape, those habits and patterns, and change the way you do the work, well, that frees you up to do more of the right work and more of the work that helps you achieve the results you seek to achieve. So I would say that's biggest
significant.
Mm-hmm.
And if memory serves me right, obviously our listeners who listen to us regularly, they know that UpLevel are licensees of the coactive methodology, but I believe you chose Coach U. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we had chose Coach U to train up our coaching team. Yeah.
Can you share a bit more about that methodology and what had you choose it? I just want to offer other, schools and methodologies to folks too who are listening.
Yeah, to be honest, they had the relationship in the US, so they had chosen it kind of first. So it made sense for us to sort of carry it out. I found there are a lot of similarities, right? In terms of, okay, here you are, here's where you want to be. This is the messy middle we're going to play with, and it can kind of go either way. What I would say now, and it could just be a factor of we didn't go this far into the Coach U experience, but the process coaching component of CTI, we didn't have that with Coach U, and they might have it now. I'm not close enough with the organization any longer, but it's different. So I think Coach U gave us the business framework, and that helps when you're speaking to business people who maybe aren't so interested in the maybe more touchy-feely side of coaching. Yeah. So I think it resonated from that perspective that there was very much a from to and this gap analysis. So it was using language that resonated in the business world. And so it helped bridge the gap of understanding.
That's helpful. No, that's great. Sure. And actually, this season was kicked off by one of our elders with Eric Kohner. And he and a couple of our other elders were they founded the coaching profession, and the Coach U and the Coactive Training Institute emerged at the same time. A group of people who were actually actors in New York City who were getting consulting and how to get more gigs, essentially.
Wow.
And a lot of the early, the ways that we train, through Coactive and Coach U were birthed from those times. And so if, people are interested in the history, listen to Eric Kohner's.
Okay.
Eric Kohner's episode. Yeah, because it is fascinating how this was birthed and who was around. But yeah, I wanted to make sure we talked about Coach U too, because there's a lot of different methodologies, and so folks who are in roles like Moira, who have the authority and the ability to bring in a coaching methodology. I mean, you could do research till you're blue in the face, but I know what Moira did is, and you've heard it today, is she became a practitioner herself. So she did the education, she walked the talk, and this really, I know, has helped you make informed business decision for what's the best methodology to bring in-house. How does it need to be structured and customized to your particular audience, right? And I believe you've had to do that over and over again, because as you spread it across the organization into different parts of it as well.
Yeah, I think, in general, you use consulting firms to kind of come up with your new sort of leader competencies and behaviors. There's lots of ways to go at it. And, at the bottom line, the same way that we think about individuals as coaching, if you think of our company went through some coaching to decide who we are and how we want to be, it's you always go back to your core values, right? And so the same for our organization. We wanted to make sure that everything was aligned with our values, that we put the client at the center, that we work in partnership, and in particular that we that we recognize and respect each individual person's contribution and capability, right? So I think whenever you're about to embark on any vendor relationship, frankly, regardless if it's coaching, it's does this align with who we are and how we choose to do things? Because it always sends a signal, right? In terms of what you stand for.
It's so important. How has coaching changed your life, Moira?
Oh man. Yeah. It completely. Where do I even start? So, I mean, we've been talking about work on this podcast, but I am a mom of 3, and I think I use coaching every minute of the day with my 3 children, and especially as we've moved into the teenage years. You know, my children don't want my advice; they're very capable, and to hold them so makes a huge difference, right? So it has helped me to acknowledge my emotions, to get more in touch with them in a really constructive way. Again, not to judge them. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that coaching has afforded me is to really be more aware of when I'm in a space of judgment, which can be hard in life. And so, and also it's just when is it my agenda versus theirs? So I think about kids, especially, they're going to make choices that, look, you in your head, you're like, this reflects poorly on me, which no, it doesn't. But if you're not aware enough, if you haven't done the work and if you haven't, had the opportunity to be coached and to really experience that value, it's harder to separate yourself from all of those moments. Right. So coaching, I think, has just afforded me the luxury of being a very conscious parent and has helped helped me to develop my children into independent, capable, strong, successful, beautiful humans. And I'm super proud of that. But I would absolutely 100% give full credit to the fact that I was open to learn through all the coaching experiences. From a work standpoint, you connect with humans differently when you understand them in that way, when you can have a real human experience, when you develop a lot of humility through coaching, because you realize you too have patterns and you too make bad decisions and you too, will fall victim to,
the negative
little ego and the negative head trash and all those things. And actually, it makes you more powerful. Like I am a way better leader because I can appreciate that all of those things happen, even to me,
even to you.
And so if I, the funny thing is that one of my most powerful coaching experiences.
That's what I was going to ask you because you've had a lot of sage coaches. Yeah.
I've had a lot of sage. I mean, I've had so many moments. The one where I fell to my knees in a puddle of tears and had that oh crap moment, where it that I've had a lot of breakthroughs, but this one shook me to my core was in a mindset coaching program. And actually what was beautiful about this is that I was not being directly coached. This was a group coaching program, which I am a huge proponent of, by the way, because I've seen this done so brilliantly. And so through someone else's experience, I had my own experience and collapsed to the floor and realized that the biggest block that I have, and I say I have because you never get rid of it really, is that I don't love myself the way I love other people. And I was like, whoa, it really hurts when you realize that.
Yes, sister.
Can you imagine not loving yourself as much? And I mean, I have a lot, I am a lover to the max.
Yes, you
I
are.
just ooze love. And I never thought for a moment to just pause and ooze love all over myself. And what's worse is that I actually felt like I couldn't and I shouldn't. And it was in that moment when I realized, the could and the should, and all those.
Yeah, that's when we know the head trash is present. When the coulds and the shoulds, you get should it all over yourself. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it was, it was raw and I was real. And I spent a month and a half listening to the same loving and listening to yourself podcast over and over. Yeah. And I had to actually, to break it one night, I learned this concept from this coach about borrowing the feeling. So what's the feeling you want to feel? And I was like, that feeling as a mom when you tell your kid you love them, how much love you feel in your heart. So I was like, I'm going to borrow that feeling. I'm going to pretend like I'm loving on my kid right now. And then I loved on myself with that feeling.
It's brilliant.
It was unreal.
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of coaching, is that you have those real moments where you really unlock something new. And the thing is, that doesn't just happen once. Like last year, I had another coach, just totally different approach, and one who, I'm a very self-aware person because I've done all this work, and I will go toe to toe with you. Like I am sure I know myself. I'm sure I
Yeah.
have it
Oh,
figured
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And this woman would not stand down. And I hated every freaking minute of it and
Yes.
loved it. You know what I mean? Where you're just
Yes.
like, I need this so badly that I'm going to push through this painful experience. And yeah, just to have someone really like who can, get at all your goods, right? All
Mm-hmm.
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it just unlocks you. Like last year, I had one of the best years at a very challenging time because I was able to just truly be free and be who I am at my best. And to, to live my purpose, which very much is seeing others' capability and supporting them to bring that to life.
Yeah.
So coaching is very powerful.
I mean, and there's the ROI of coaching in the workplace. When organizations choose to do these kinds of trainings with colleagues and they get to witness each other the way Moira just described, like she wasn't even the person getting coached in that first story, but
Mm-hmm.
the epiphanies that we get when we see others going through the experience and the camaraderie that's created with your colleagues. Not to say there's a shared language, which is just like brass tacks nowadays. Let's have a shared language, please.
Yeah.
But it's more of those like human moments.
Yeah.
When we get to see each other in our humanness and realize like, okay, you know what? Most of us are fighting very similar battles, and I don't have to pretend, one, that I'm alone or that I have to have it all together all the time, which you've said in so many different ways, Moira, through this conversation. That is the ROI of coaching in the workplace, because it does increase engagement. It does drive business results. I mean, if people are more embodied in who they are and they're processing their emotions, their work is going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. And because they bring their best selves. They're not blocking off anything. And
They bring their best selves. So what's your final words on this theme of the ROI of coaching in the workplace, perhaps to someone who's in a role like yours and has an opportunity maybe to bring in coach training? What would you say to them?
I would say don't wait would be the first thing. And then you don't have to dive all in. Just, try it and be open to it. The biggest thing is that what I have seen is when you unlock the individual, you unlock creativity, you unlock willingness, you unlock innovation. You create this courage in the workplace that we know is required now more than ever, based on the pace of change, based on just everything that's going on in the world. Like, we are humans, and humans have a unique and shared experience. And when you can connect on that human level more openly, more deeply, with more empathy, you will get the best out of people on a consistent basis, and you'll grow yourself at the same time. And that just feels great.
I love you even more than the day I met you 24 years ago at that advertising agency in Toronto. And you continue to blow me away with your commitment to your growth. You've always been committed to your growth, and you have a high bar of excellence, but you also have a high bar of humility. And I see it deepening in you, like just being able to reconnect with you in this conversation. You are a humble, passionate, powerful leader, Moira Klein-Swormink, and I'm so grateful that you said yes to coming to talk to us.
Thanks, Christie. I'm so glad you extended the offer, and it's just a delight to see all your success as well, and to be able to share in this full circle moment right here with you. So congrats to you, and thank you so much.
And let the listeners know how they can connect with you. We'll put it in the show notes, but
certainly look me up on LinkedIn. So Moira KS is my handle on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to hear from you that way for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moira.